There was a man who cared for nothing. Not in the usual trite sense, not in the melancholic sigh of the poet, nor in the self-pitying silence of the broken. No, Lysander Crane's indifference was elemental. It was the quiet annihilation of wonder. He was a cathedral emptied of prayer, a body that had forgotten warmth, a clock whose hands had stopped and never bothered to resume. His apartment was his reliquary, a tomb pretending to be a home. The wallpaper hung like diseased skin, yellowed and splitting along its seams. The air was a sepulchre's breath, stale, slow, and vaguely sweet with the odor of something long dead but not yet buried. Dust didn't merely settle, it nestled, thick and complacent, veiling the few possessions he'd never cared enough to discard. A cracked mirror, a lamp that buzzed when it shouldn't have, and a single chair upholstered in the color of old bruises. He didn't rise with the morning nor rest with the night. The sun and moon were equally irrelevant to him. His body went through the pantomime of existence, eating, sleeping, breathing. But all of it felt perfunctory, like the habitual twitching of a corpse, still trying to remember what life had felt like. Outside, the city shrieked with vitality. Tires screamed, lovers quarreled, windows spilled laughter and music into the streets below. But for Lysander, it was all detritus. Sound without soul, movement without meaning. He watched from behind his unwashed window, gazing at the living as one might regard ants dancing on the lid of a coffin. And then, on some evening that refused to be defined, a night without a proper beginning or end, something took notice. At first it was just the sound, too soft to be anything but imagined, a slow rustling within the walls, like fabric dragging over wet stone. Then came the scent, fetid, floral, obscene, something between decay and perfume. The plaster bulged, pulsing faintly, as though the house had grown an errant heart. Lysander didn't move. His pulse didn't even quicken. He merely blinked once, a languid reptilian gesture, and whispered to no one in particular, "Do as you please." The bulge split like overripe fruit. Darkness leaked out, thick, syrupy, and alive. It unfurled across the floor in tendrils, tasting the air, gliding with the slow deliberation of a predator too certain to hurry. The thing rose from the concept of shadow itself, shedding form and absence in equal measure until it resembled a silhouette detached from any light source. It regarded him. No eyes, no face, only attention. Lysander stared back, his expression a masterpiece of indifference. Well, is this where I scream? The shadow hesitated, as though confused. Its tendrils quivered, reaching toward him, sliding up the leg of his chair, curling like fingers around his throat. When it touched him, the room shuddered. The bulb flickered once, and light, all light, seemed to bleed out through the cracks of reality. Colors inverted, the air thickened into a palpable weight. And still Lysander didn't move. That darkness seeped through his skin, oozing into him as if invited. His veins pulsed with it, turning black beneath the pallid surface of his flesh. His eyes rolled back, and yet he remained disturbingly calm. Serene, even. It entered him, expecting terror, resistance, flavor. But there was nothing. Only the hollow echo of a man long past caring. Inside it found no fear to feed on, no despair to drink, no pleading to savor, only the infinite quiet, vast and sterile and pitiless. The thing faltered. It writhed inside him, starving, gnawing for meaning. But apathy is a poison, and it drank deep. Soon the shadow's movements slowed, its substance thinning, unraveling into smoke, and it began to dissipate, dissolving like ink in water, undone by the sheer nothingness it had hoped to conquer. Lysander smiled faintly, the expression devoid of any triumph or joy. "Now you understand. There's nothing to take," he said softly. Around him, the apartment sighed in relief, or in death. The walls slumped, their structure exhausted. Plaster cracked open like brittle skin. Furniture wept rot. The air curdled. Even the city beyond the window began to dim. Street lights flickering out, car horns silenced mid-blare, buildings bowing inward as though ashamed of their persistence. And then something vaster stirred. The horizon bent, the stars dimmed in sympathy. Skies collapsed like wet paper, their constellations smearing into a languorous spiral of extinguished fire. Oceans folded inward, devouring their own reflections. Mountains sagged. Time, mortified by its own continuity, stopped altogether. And through it all, Lysander sat, unmoving, the last fixed point in a dissolving cosmos. His eyes were pools of dull mercury, reflecting nothing. His skin was gray and glassy. The thing within him, the once proud shadow, had been reduced to an echo, trapped inside the vacuum of his indifference. He exhaled once, a sound that was almost a sigh. At last there was quiet. No agony, no salvation, only the immaculate stillness of a world that had decided that it would stop caring too. The stars went out with the gentleness of dying embers. The heavens folded like petals in reverse. Space itself contracted into a single shimmering dot, a perfect, indifferent eye, before vanishing into nothing. And Lysander Crane was that nothing, cold and immaculate, effulgent in apathy.